Right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to talk about something today that's impacted the way that we coach at Foot Tech. Something that me and Nick learned a good few years ago now on a course that just got us thinking a lot. But as a parent, as a football coach, you'll hear things like, we hear it a lot. Why does my child keep passing backwards during games? Why do the freezing games but look good at training? Coaches might ask questions of children and they can give the answers no problem, but then they'll do the exact opposite in a game. These are all things that we hear that and what we've sort of come to realise is some of these problems. It's not so much a technical problem. Sometimes it's a habit problem, and that's what we want to talk about today. Habits, unconscious habits. And as I say, this is something that we learnt a while ago that really impacted the way that we coach, really impacted the way that we speak to children, how we plan sessions, and so on. I think it's a real good one for parents and coaches to understand and just be mindful of, really. So what do I mean by unconscious habits? So as a definition, an unconscious habit is a behaviour a child repeats without thinking because the environment has trained it into them. Okay, so it's learned responses to repeated situations. It might be the things that they're doing in a training session or a classroom environment. The learning from that. The words that they're hearing from coaches, teachers, parents, and so on. And also the reactions that they're seeing. Reactions from teammates, from sideline and coaches and so on. So it's some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is how to recognise it and maybe help your child, help your players do what you need them to do, really. Where these habits are maybe coming up and having a negative impact, I suppose. Just before we go into some of the stuff football specific, Nick, how has it impacted you learning this stuff? How has it impacted you and how you coach?
Yeah, it's just how you look at all of it, I suppose, really. If you believe that most decisions are unconscious rather than conscious, and you believe that players kind of act, what's the word you've used here? Reactions, instincts, habits. It's those that they fall back on rather than making a conscious decision. And due to that, that's going to completely change how you set up your sessions. And
That's the important distinction in what you've said there, like a conscious decision and an unconscious decision. That's what. Can you talk a bit more about that and just sort of explain that for everybody?
yeah, so it would often be assumed that everything that a player does is a result of a conscious decision-making process. So they're in the game, they've seen something in the game, they've processed information, they've got some prior knowledge stored in their brain, and then they use that to come up with a response in that situation. Whereas unconscious actions are like instantaneous. The player sees something and acts as a result of that at the same time. So the thing with conscious actions is it's a slow process. And if you ever played the game, and when I play the game, I can't think of a time when it's felt slow and that I've been able to stop and think, oh, what did Coach Luke say to me that time on a Tuesday night when I was in this situation again? It's instantaneous. You need to get into it. So you're not trying to give players answers anymore. You're not going to say when you're in this situation you should do X, Y, and Z. Instead, you're going to create problems for players to solve themselves in sessions and let them make their own decisions and develop their own habits in that way. And you just want to be careful. You just want to ensure that you're creating habits that are going to be useful in the game, and you're not asking players to do things which could potentially create a habit which you wouldn't want them to have in the game.
Yeah. I just that's an important distinction in it because I think there's too much. And I probably thought this when we talk about decision making in football that before the ball's got to you, you know exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, how you're going to execute it, and then what's going to happen afterwards. But really, it happens so fast that that's not always the case. But you will be everybody listening to this that has played. You will know you've done things in the past without even realizing why. In a non-football context, for parents and coaches, think about what could be an example. Driving a car. Like the things that you do, you just go into like the flow state, don't you? And you're reacting to things, but it's habits. It's probably not articulated it very, very well.
If you think about driving, driving is something that we all do, and a lot of people who experience when you finish a journey and someone says to you, "Tell me about that journey," like, I can't remember driving home at all. I don't know how that happened, and it's gone because you were, talk about autopilot and things like that. Also, when you're driving, you might have another passenger in the car that you're having a conversation with. You might be on the phone, hands free, obviously. You might be singing along to the radio or something like that. So again, that's showing that you're not making decisions about driving in that moment in time. You're focusing on singing, or you're focusing on having a conversation. Or another one, driving, which I think is a good one. Have you ever got into your car to go somewhere, and a few minutes into the journey, oh, shit, I'm driving to work again. You've just gone into autopilot. So it just, there's so much of how humans behave is these unconscious decisions, and understanding that and accepting that will mean that there's no. So how it changes from traditional coaching will be, you need to put knowledge in a person's brain first. They need to understand the why and the when and the how of what they're doing, to then be able to apply it, because the belief is that when they're in that situation again, they'll recall whatever you've told them or whatever questions you've asked them, and they'll use that knowledge to come up with the solution to that answer. But we're saying that isn't what happens, and you don't even need to have that prior knowledge in the first place, which is really, really a key distinction. I'll try to give you an example on that. You think about tennis, game of tennis. So if you look at a high school tennis curriculum, children are going to do tennis in half term 3, year 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that'll be set up in like a linear kind of, so it might be year 7, you're going to do forehands. Year 8, you're going to do backhands. Year 9, you're going to do serve, whatever. And that's like a common way things are set out. A hypothetical situation, let's assume that a child turns up day 1 of tennis and they've never played tennis before, they've never seen tennis before, they've never heard tennis before. That lesson is about the forehand, and the teacher is going to give them lots of information about how to execute a forehand, how to stand, where to hold your racket, what direction to look in, how to move your body, blah, 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 blah. And then they're going to do an activity where they're going to try and hit forehands back over the net. What is also true is, let's say me and you are partners, I'm throwing the ball to you, working on your forehand, boom, 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 boom. But one of my throws goes to your backhand side. Now, in this activity, there's always a task. There always needs to be something that is trying to be accomplished. So in this situation, the task is hit the ball back over the net. Now, if it comes to your backhand side, there's every chance that you would be able to efficiently and effectively hit that backhand stroke over the net, because that's where you were stood, that's where the ball came to you, that's where the task was. You've got a racket in your hand, you can do that, and that will have come about without that person ever even hearing the word backhand, let alone it being described to them and explained to them and modelled to them. So that's just one example that shows it's not about prior knowledge and understanding, whereas so much coaching is designed in a way where it's about putting knowledge into people's brains. And if you're saying that isn't what actually happens in the game, then it doesn't make sense to do that while you're coaching. You're not coaching anymore, you're performing a coaching act, I suppose.
Okay, so football specific then, I made a list of a few that might ring true with people. So you might have a child that is constantly playing with their head down. They're looking at the ball. Coaches and parents are going crazy, get your head up, get your head up. Now, it's all right saying get your head up, but if that child is doing nothing at training other than perhaps individual ball work, with no defenders, no opposition, no interference, then no goals to aim at, these sorts of things, then his head is probably, or her head is probably going to be at the ball, looking at the ball, because there is no reason to get the head up. So that's one thing. Not playing forwards. So you might have a team of players who one or two of them just don't want to play forwards, or the team doesn't want to play forwards when they get the ball on a Saturday or Sunday, and that could be because they're doing things like rigid passing patterns. There's an overuse of rondos maybe. So for parents listening to this that aren't aware, a rondo, the simplest form is there's a circle of kids, there's one kid in the middle, and the kids are trying to pass it around themselves without that person in the middle getting the ball. There's perhaps maybe praise. So in terms of wording, there's praise coming for keeping possession, even if they're not progressing the ball. So the children, the habit they're building is, oh, this is success. I'm getting success by just keeping possession and not trying to play forward. So you see where I'm coming at there. That's another habit that's formed where naturally their reaction to these to getting the ball is not going to be play forwards because they've done so much stuff that doesn't reward playing forward. It's not being provoked. Um, Another one I'd say things like losing the ball because they've got too much. The ball comes to them in a game and they're consistently losing it because they're being pressed and closed down. This is one that a lot of parents talk to us about, and again, that could be as simple as it's not a technique issue. It's that they're doing too much training where there's no defenders pressing them, so they're naturally going to believe that they've got more time on the ball. So hopefully that just gives people a bit of an understanding from a football context. These are all things that parents talk to us about. And another one, he or she is scared to shoot. We get that so much that they're really scared to shoot whenever they get the ball. Think about if they consistently see parents' reactions on the sideline. If a shot's missed, it's a negative reaction or a coach's negative reaction. Or again, are they doing anything at training where shooting is encouraged and provoked and wanted and rewarded, or is it just all small possession based things where they seem to get more reward from keeping the ball and passing it between them than they do for trying to progress the ball and score a goal? So if they're not going to be shooting a lot of training, then the habit's probably not going to be formed. But then the first thing that will be said to us is he or she's really scared to shoot, and the parents are forgiven for thinking that straight away that's a technique issue. They're scared to shoot because they can't do it, and a lot of the time, or some of the time, it might just be that it's just their natural reaction to these situations. I've explained that well enough, Nick.
Yeah. I think you can use what you're saying there to look at how we coach and how maybe it's different from more traditional ones. So you talk about things like keeping your head down, not getting your head up, not playing forward at the earliest opportunity. The first thing there is to always start with football, which sounds obvious, but football is there's an attacking team and there's a defending team. Attacking team are trying to score a goal, defending team are trying to stop a goal being scored. As long as that's happening, everything that happens within that will be football action based. If you have two teams and two goals, and you tell the teams know that they have to try and score there and defend there, they're gonna press, they're gonna tackle, they're gonna find space, they're gonna dribble, they're gonna shoot, they're gonna pass. You don't break those things down separately. You just create a situation where they're all gonna come out, and you leave it to them to create their own decisions. It's not about putting them in a game and saying off you go and there you go from there. So the ones you said about keeping your head down when dribbling and not playing forward, if there's no goals or there's no forward progress option, then that player is not going to look to play forward. They're going to play with their head down, and that's going to develop that habit and keep that habit in place to keep their head down when they get the ball and dribble. So you think, right, okay, as a coach, I need to affect that. I don't want them just to dribble all the time. I want them to decide whether to shoot, pass, or dribble. Okay, so instead of just a 1v1 where it's me against you and I'm trying to get past you, that's the only task where it's I'm going to dribble, I'm not going to dribble. Instead, we put a goal in, and I'm playing football now. I'm just trying to score a goal. If I need to go past you to score a goal, fine. If I can score without going past you, fine. There's an important distinction to make there. If a player has got the ball and they can score, and instead they do 3-step overs, beat the defender and score, as nice as that looks, I think you could argue that is not intelligent football play. That is not a good football action. They should have scored at the earliest possible opportunity, because that is the whole point of the game. So choosing not to do that and instead dribbling because you're more used to dribbling is something that you want to try and affect. So from 1v1s, you'd instead have bigger numbers, 2v1s, 3v2s, 2v2s, 3v2s, whatever. So now the realism of the decision making is improved, because the player on the ball, it's not just you've got to dribble past this player. It's you're trying to score a goal. You might need to dribble past the player. You might need to pass to your teammates. The defender is now determining what they're doing, their positioning, their actions based on their position, the attacker with the ball's position, the attacker with the ball's teammates, the defensive teammates. That's all going to affect the position on the pitch. So it's a lot more realistic now. it also depends on the players that got in front of you. Going from a 1v1 into a 2v1 because you want players to pass doesn't necessarily mean that some players are going to pass, and it could be you're dealing with younger players, they're not passing yet. You've got to, the way that we coach a lot about watching and assessing and analysing what's going on, and it's the players that will get to a point where they're showing that they've got the ability to pass now, and then you'll do more passing activities. I've got a group tonight, a good group, strong group, really good on the ball, all play for football teams outside of foot tech, can pass well, They also really like to have the ball, and they like to dribble, and they're really good at dribbling, and they want to dribble, and that would probably be their natural instinct to do that. Certainly at training tonight, where it's not a match day environment, maybe less pressure on them to do so. But I don't want them to just dribble all the time. I want to do it at the right time. So I might putting that second player in might not get them to do that. They might still keep making the wrong decision. So instead I might have to put a rule in. You have to pass once before you score, or to get from this half to that half of the pitch, you have to pass before you can score. So now when they're getting the ball, they're starting to pass. This is a long process, you keep revising it, going back to it, but then I take that rule away and I'm starting to look, are they passing more than they were before doing? Are they starting to get their head up more? The flip side of that is, if I'm always making it like that, where there's a progression target or a goal to play into, yes, they're going to get really good at playing forward, which is what I want them to do. But there are also going to be times in the game where the only solution here is to dribble past your direct opponent. If I've always been in a situation where they're playing forward and they get really good at that and they play forward, they're not actually practicing that dribble against a defender. So I might deliberately in my training session say, right, we're getting rid of the goals there, we're getting rid of the forward passing option, you're stuck. The only way out of this is dribbling. So I will use that at certain times deliberately, whereas at other times I'll say you have to pass. If I say it's always 1v1 dribbling and there's never a goal, I'm going to create that bad habit of they always dribble. But if I have a balance of doing that, sometimes where they have to dribble, sometimes where they can pass, then hopefully they're learning to get a bit of both in there, and they're going to start making their own decisions over time and keep developing that. And the other important thing is the activity that I do with that group tonight. It's not the activity that is good. You wouldn't want a coach to watch that activity and say, oh yeah, that's a really good activity, I'm going to go use it with my team. That's a good activity for those players, because you might have a group of players who their first instinct isn't to dribble, it is to pass, and you actually want to do something that's almost the opposite of that. So it's not about copy and pasting drills, but that's very much how we coach it. It's making subtle differences, and it's a lot of analysing the players as they play and seeing what they're doing and trying to guide where they go next and making sure it's all relative to football. It's not about giving them the answers, it's about providing solutions for them to solve themselves.
And it's not easy, is it? As anyone listening can probably just understand from what you've just said there, it's we send ourselves mental trying to create these things, but it is based on who's in front of you. And people will argue that kids at a certain age should be doing X, Y, and Z, and then at this next phase they should be doing X, Y, and Z. And yeah, potentially, but I also think it needs to be individualised as well. Not all the kids who are 8 to 9 years old will need in one of our groups will need the same things as the 8 to 9 year olds in a Saturday group, for example. Every kid's different. As you say, it's just about assessing what they need, and coaches, parents, just looking at it, taking a step back and thinking what do my kids need here? What do they need to work on, and can I design things to provoke that? Or as a parent, can I change my wording, my language, my reactions to things to help them, or find them some extra training or whatever if they need it, if you're feeling not going to get that at their grassroots training. We'll talk about that in a second. But this we started thinking about this just, what was it now? Was it 2 years ago? Yeah, about 2.5 years ago, back when we went to Amsterdam on an FCE course, which got us thinking about everything. And I think one of the things that I came away with there were drills that I thought were good, and drills that I thought were doing, activities that I thought were doing one thing. We'd thought a lot about this prior to that course as well, but I think it was just the way that this was explained to me there. It helped solidify everything. And I think that there was a phrase along the lines of, training doesn't prepare players for football, it prepares them for training unless it's designed properly. Which I think what the gist of that was that, yeah, we need to be designing things for the football match. They need to be doing the things in training for the football match, not just to not just, how can I explain it? Not just to succeed in whatever the training activity is requiring. Is that training activity helping them for the matches and for when it counts? So that really made it. That really sort of put it into perspective for me, and in terms of like designing sessions, designing activities that and not just based on, oh yeah, this is a good passing drill, we'll do that because they'll work because they'll get good at passing with this. It was taking a step back and saying, well, will that actually happen? Is that what's happening here? Just because somebody's labelled it a passing drill, is that actually what's happening? We want to give a little bit of advice for parents and coaches with this as well, just to just leave you with something actionable, I suppose. And I think as a parent, and feel free to chip in on this, Nick, but observe things and look at things like, do they always choose the safest option when they get the ball? Do they freeze in matches? Do they stop moving after passing? Did they pass the ball then just stop? Do they avoid trying to take players on when actually that might be the best option to do so? And then take a step back from that and just look at maybe the training activities they're doing. Look at the way you're talking to them, the way you're encouraging them or reacting to things, and just see if there's anything that you can control there. And that might be things like, if you're a coach, changing up the training sessions. If you're a parent where your child's going to a grassroots team and it's a volunteer coach and there's not much you can do to impact the training, obviously, then it might be that you find them some extra training elsewhere where they can develop the right habits, which will help them for the team. I had as an example of this, I had a parent on Saturday who brought his boy down for a 1-to-1 session with me. Primary school age, I think he might only be 8. Technically, so good. It was an absolute joy to coach. I mean, the way he pinged the ball and controlled the ball, he had everything. Everything that you think, what a real good player in that environment. And his dad said the main problem for him was when he was getting the ball on a Sunday in his matches, he wanted rid of it straight away. He was just getting rid of it, even when taking a touch and trying to play forwards, trying to dribble and progress the ball himself was the best option. It was like he was scared. He's scared to do it. Technically, if based on what I saw on Saturday, I'd have no problem in thinking that it's not a technical problem, because he's clearly very, very good. And what I spoke to his dad about was what type of training is he doing? What's happening in that training? What's the reactions like on the sidelines? What are the coaches telling him to do? And another example might be that if a child's playing in defence and all they're hearing from the sideline when that child gets the ball is get rid, go long, kick it away, you're going to forgive that child when he goes in or she goes into midfield and they get the ball, and then their first thought is, I need to kick it away now because I've just been doing that for the last few games in defence. It's these sorts of things. And so this was a conversation that I had with the parent as to, it might not be what you think. It might not be that he can't do it, because I think he could. It might be something else that's going on. Plays in a very good team on a Sunday, so maybe the sessions are very much one and two touch activities. Fine, but then it's okay. That's brilliant, but does there need to be a balance? Are some of these kids missing out on the habit of trying to dribble forwards and beat players when it's the right thing to do, because all they're doing is small-sided possession, 1-2 touch stuff? Okay, again, that might be what some of the kids need. It might not be what all the kids need. It's so hard to say you must do this and must do that, but this is just an example of these habits manifesting themselves in things like a real good player with good technical ability being a bit scared to try and take people on when he's probably got the ability to do so. That's might not be what's happening in this situation. This particular example, I'm just using that as an example of something recently. In terms of other things, so it's kind of like looking at how the training looks. you can praise things when they do it. We talk about this a lot. So if they have been struggling and maybe scared to shoot and things like that, if they do have a shot and it's not gone in, it's gone massive, it's gone way over the bar or whatever, praise it. Praise their bravery. Praise, just going to encourage them a little bit more. Just praise what they tried to do as opposed to what happened, because that's going to start instilling a good thing in their brain to maybe try that again, because they've not been shouted at, they've not been told off for trying a shot, so they're never going to try a shot again. Yeah, getting that bravery in, helping them understand that mistakes are part of learning, all that good stuff that we try to promote. Push, do that. If your child is struggling with these things, you just got to take every opportunity you can to go overboard with the praise when they do try to do one of these things, because that might be what helps just nudge that habit in the right direction. And again, the other thing is, do you need to find some, if they're only training once a week with the grassroots team, do you need to find them some additional training elsewhere, perhaps, just to get them in these environments that need to be in with the right sorts of activities and so on. Anything you'd add there, Nick?
Yeah, I think just going back to the decision making and the unconscious side of it. Already mentioned how prior knowledge with the backhand example isn't necessary, and just to highlight that a lot of coaches will have experienced something like this, where you're coaching, something happens. Whoa, stop there, boom, Luke, what should you have done here? Oh, I should have passed. All right, but they actually dribbled in the game. And then we go through the process of, right, okay, give it back to him. Luke, you play it there. Does that right? Yeah, well done. Off we go. And this idea that we've then fixed that situation. But if you then, what that shows is, if that player knew the answer, they knew what they should have done, but when they were playing the game, they didn't do it, that is because they didn't have the time to consciously think about that answer and to come up with that answer. Their instincts took back over, and their instinct in that situation was not to pass, even though when you stop it and give them the time of day and ask them to check their knowledge, they do have that knowledge. So again, in that moment, if you think as a coach, the issue is that they don't have enough knowledge, and you start talking to them saying, you should do this, this, and this, but they've just shown to you that it isn't about understanding, it isn't about knowledge, it's about habits and instincts. So that's why you have to just constantly put them in game-based situations and allow them to make their own decisions, so then over time they will correctly pass or dribble in that situation. And the other thing about decision making is how much of it's going on. We're talking about unconscious, like so many during a game, so many. And you think about skilled performance as well. Imagine a situation where a player's got a ball and they've looked up, they've seen what's going on, and right, I'm going to pass over there. So they start passing. They start moving their body to pass that ball. In that moment, the other players on the pitch, based on what the player with the ball, their movements are about to do, they're going to start moving to anticipate where the ball's going, to anticipate what's going to happen next. That can lead to a situation where the player with the ball is halfway through a decision, halfway through doing what they're doing, and all of a sudden the picture slightly changes because those defenders have anticipated what's coming next, and then out of nowhere there's a better, different decision that they then switch to during the first decision that they're executing, which sounds, I know it sounds mental. So, but that is skill, and that fleeting half a second when that opportunity opens up and can be taken, you can only get better at that through experience, through being in that situation time and time again, and getting more and more tuned into it. So an expert in a game situation, there's millions of things going on, isn't there? But they will be really attuned to what things are important, whereas a novice, they will see there'll be loads of stuff going on, and they won't really know which things to focus on to come up with an efficient solution to that problem. But yeah, the decision making, the overlapping of decision making, decisions or opportunities for decisions appearing and disappearing and changing constantly throughout the game. And again, the point we made prior to that we've seen. I don't feel it when I play. I don't see it when I ask players, what should you have done in that situation? So I can't coach in that way that assumes players are going to stop and consciously think, because, well, that would just be me being a charlatan, wouldn't it, essentially?
Exactly. I think you and I talk a lot about this, the decision making thing and putting them into games based activities, and we always get a lot of pushback. Oh yeah, but kids need to be able to kick first and blah blah. it's just not the case. We're not world beaters in terms of coaching kids football. We're not the best in the world. So if we can do it, then everyone can. And we work with so many mixed ability children, children that have never played football before, very young children, children late to football that have come at 12 years old having never played for a team, barely done any training, and they're able to join in these sorts of activities because we scale it down. It's a conversation that we've had before, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future again. But it can be done. It's just about putting them into these problem solving situations, and particularly if you're a grassroots coach of a team where you've had them now for 3 or 4 years, it becomes much easier to do these sorts of things. And but even so, the sooner you can expose them to these things, the better habits they'll develop, and the more you'll enjoy it, because you're not going to have to be worrying about, oh well, this week they didn't pass forwards, the other week they wouldn't shoot, because it'll all just start to happen naturally. And of course there's going to be things you're going to focus on more often than not, more so than other things based on what you're seeing. But try not to look at it surface level. That was a bad pass, we must work on passing. It's not that. It's dig a bit deeper and just see what else.
You've got to reference everything they're doing with the game. And example we'd often say is like that, right, okay, young players, let's teach them how to pass. So again, me and you are partners. I'm going to stand here with the ball. You're going to stand there with the ball. I'm going to pass it to you. You're going to troll it, pass it back to me. Right, we're practicing passing. But really look at that and really think about what the player is doing. So the ball comes to me, I stop the ball. I then get the opportunity to look up. There's no time constraints, no time pressure on me at all. See where you are. Oh, you haven't moved, by the way. That's not very realistic as well, but whatever. And then in my own time and in my own way, I pass the ball back to you. Boom. You do the same thing. I do the same thing. That doesn't happen in a game. In a game, everyone's moving already. The ball's coming from different situations. You've got pressure on you as soon as you take that touch. You don't want the first thing a player to do is to control the ball, then look at the game. You want them to be looking at the game and then control the ball ideally. But that little drill is developing the wrong habit. And so like you keep alluding to, you've just got to be careful when you look at your players on a match. Say, wow, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Are you developing that habit accidentally because you're focusing on something else? And that comes down to your constraints and your conditions of your games as well. I was doing one the other week where I was saying that the player, I can't even remember what it was. It was something about passing. The player on the ball had to pass forward. Player on the ball had to pass forward. So that might look like, I'm focusing on passing. It wasn't. My intention for that drill was support players to make forward runs. So I instead of telling them I want you to make forward runs today, instead I said to the players with the ball, you have to play forward. So they're going to have to help with that by being a forward option. I'll just finish with that point. For coaching, what a more traditional view of coaching is I'm going to give these players the answers. I'm going to put the answers in their head so that I know when they're in this situation again, they can use those answers. We've talked about how we don't think that is the case after all. So instead, you want to put players in situations where they're solving problems for themselves. So you want players to be better at receiving the ball with a defender behind them, right? So traditionally it might be, right, okay, the ball's going to come into you. I want you to make yourself nice and strong. I want you to see where the player is. I want you to feel them. I want to and then I want you to try and get past them and score. Really, I don't care how they get past the player and score, and it's going to be different based on the individual. So in that activity, really, I'd probably focus on coaching the defender, and I'd say, right, the ball's going to go from here to here. By the time it gets to that player, I need you to be as close as possible to that player so that it's really difficult for them to turn. And then all of a sudden, I've created a problem for that attacker to try and solve. They're going to have to try and outplay with a defender behind them, which was my intention for the session. But I haven't had to tell them what to do. I've just created a problem by using the defender. On that's because, again, you have to accept the incredible amounts of variability between players. And me saying to a player, right, we're going to do this drill. When the ball comes into you, I want you to get nice and strong. I want you to hold here. I want you to... That might work for me, or that might work for one player in that situation, but it won't work for all players. If you're a powerhouse like you're going to want to receive it there, aren't you, with your defender close to you, because you're going to use your body to roll them. Whereas if I'm not that player, I'm small and I haven't got that physicality, actually I'm going to want to create space between me and the defender, some separation there, so I can receive it to turn and then outplay them. But again, it's not about, I can't give the answer to every single possible player, to every single possible variability. What I can do is create a situation where they can bring their individual characteristics into that and develop their own skills in that situation, a game-based situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and provide them with lots of different opportunities as well, because you might be working on that activity where, yeah, the obvious thing is to use their body, but it gives them there's other things that they can do as well, because you've not restricted them to just that. And I think one thing that has I've been thinking about a lot is, okay, well, let's develop these right habits. So perhaps we do need to throw in these constraints and these rules sometimes. But then I start thinking, okay, well, what? But then am I creating a bad habit from that? Because I don't know. Let's say I want them to shoot more. Right. If you score from a first time shot, we can only score from first time shots, or whatever it might be. I'm trying to provoke this shooting thing. I'm like, yeah, but they're now all going to try and shoot all the time when that might not be the best thing. So you start to sort of question yourself a little bit and then come up with more solutions. So a solution to that one might be, instead of saying they can only score from a first time shot, I might say, if you score from a first time shot, you get 2 goals. So it's not saying they must do something, because that's probably then going to create another habit that we're not really looking for. But it's rewarding them for doing the thing that I want them to work on.
Yeah, first touch finishes are important. That's how a lot of goals are scored. So you definitely want to make sure that they're practicing and developing that skill a lot of the time. But you're also aware that in a certain situation, a first touch finish might be the worst thing to try. If you take a touch and then finish, you're definitely going to score. If you force yourself to use one touch, you're not going to score, and you would never want a player to do what isn't the best solution in a game. So yeah, you leave it open, but you try to guide it and to encourage more of the behaviours you do want to see. And then you keep looking at how players are developing, don't you? And then you add different constraints to build the whole player and make sure they're experiencing all of those types of things. Yeah, exactly that.
I think those have been that's probably a good example of something where I feel like it's been the easiest way to introduce things like this without it becoming overly complex. And I think for grassroots coaches listening to this that don't have hours and hours to plan and think through these things, then just think of maybe 1 or 2 rules. For, if your children are not passing the ball forwards quick enough, then can we put in a reward system for that, where they maybe get an extra goal if they score after a forward pass? These sort of just really simple stuff, and then just go from there. Don't send yourself crazy with it. Just keep it simple and then assess, and then add to it from there.
And revisit. You don't fix things and move on to the next one. That is an illusion. That's a myth. It's just constant. It's the state. That's why it should be principles, game principles, and game-based principles. It's not topics. You never get to the end of them. It's just the whole game and the whole principles all the time. So we can do an activity where most players have got a ball and there are a few defenders. We can do an activity where it's a 1v1. We can do a 3v3 game, whatever. But in all of those things, there'll be consistent principles, such as nearest player, go and put pressure on the ball. That is a principle that we can show in all of our sessions. So that's helping to develop that habit. You're not having them playing one way in an activity and then expecting them to play in a different way when they get to the game at the end. No, we've constantly gone back to nearest player, press the ball. And again, part of that is because you want players to go and press and to go and win the ball back, absolutely. But as everyone listening will know, that isn't the only way to defend. You can sit back, you can get in a low block. Our intention for that high pressure constantly is not for the defender to go into press. I'm not trying to teach that player to go and press. I am a bit. I'm more interested in the person getting pressed having to get a lot better at being able to deal with that pressure. If there's no pressure coming to them, then they're not going to have to get better at those outplaying skills. So again, it's using constraints, and as a coach, you'll know why you're using them. But for outsiders looking in, it might look like that rule is there for a different reason. So yeah, it's just constantly assessing and reevaluating what you're doing and why you're doing it. And unless you are playing 11-a-side football with the fans there, with the referee there, with the officials in an official game, as soon as you're not doing that, then it's not completely realistic anyway, and there will be trade-offs, and it might be, I'm going to make it unrealistic today by saying they have to do a first-time finish, but I'm not going to do that every single time they play, all the time they play, because I'm worried that I'm going to create a habit that I don't want them to have, instead of just giving them opportunity to work on their first-time finishing.
The nearest player press thing that's a general tip for coaches listening to this. If you want the intensity of your sessions to increase, then coach that, encourage that, because it's been been such a good thing that we introduced a few years ago as a main principle, because like you say, yeah, we want them to go press the ball, but it's not. It's what's happening. It's what's happening with the player on the ball and his or her teammates reacting to that. It's been a real good thing for the intensity of the sessions, 100%. Just to finish then, so coaches, we've done some parent tips there, but coaches, it's look at your players. Are they making the same mistakes even after multiple conversations, and they can tell you the answers, and after multiple training drills? And then start to question, is it a habit that you've built as a result of, as we've said, your training sessions, the activities, the words you're using, the reactions that are happening? So do you need to amend things slightly in training and provoke something else? Think about what that activity is developing habit-wise, not just what it says it is. Just because it's a Barcelona passing drill for under 12s doesn't mean that it's right for those kids. It doesn't even mean it's right for their kids. It's just because it says passing, just because it says shooting. Is it right? Is it right for your players? Is it doing that, or is it just worded as such? And then, yeah, be careful with the instructions, with the words, with the shouting, because are they instilling habits that are sort of negatively impacting their game? Yeah, think about the behaviours. Think about the behaviours and the habits that are coming up on match day, and then question what you can do to help that with regards activities and so on. And then we'll finish there. I wanted to do this today because I find it fascinating, the habit thing, and that's just me because I'm a bit of a geek with this stuff. But I think it is important. It's even down to me with parenting. With my two girls, I think about what some of the stuff I do and what habits that's instilling in the girls, in whether it be behaviour or whatever. Screen time with us. Like me, I'll pick my phone up it's just a habit. And I'm like, I'm not even conscious of picking that phone up. I'll just see it. I'll just pick it up and check something quick, whether it be Sky Sports or Instagram. And then I'll put it down. Why have I just done that? And it's
like the car thing earlier, driving and stuff like that. Again, loads of people would probably be able to relate to that. You picked up your phone to do something. A minute later, you realise you're scrolling on something else, and you've forgotten what you even picked up your phone for. But you need it unconscious.
It's a real, yeah. The brain is a fascinating thing, and for kids in particular, at those younger ages, they're going to pick things up very, very quickly, and we can impact that, and we can indirectly, unconsciously make that a negative thing without even realising it, or we can consciously make it a positive thing by taking a step back and thinking, okay, what activity I've just put on there, what words have I said, what reaction have I done that's maybe not being the best thing for them from a habit building point of view. For coaches listening to this, get yourself onto onlinefootballcourses.com. We've got I think 3 books on there now, which is all games based activities. So it's all this stuff we spoke about, developing the right sorts of habits. We've actually got one specifically for shooting and dribbling on there as well, with I think about 10 or 11 games that you can use and reuse, loads of progressions and stuff. So one of those ebooks will easily give you probably 15 to 20 training sessions quite comfortably, 15 to 20 activities, should I say, when you look at the progressions and stuff. So get yourself on there. We keep them cheap. We want to make sure that coaches get access to good quality stuff and don't have to pay the earth for it. So get on there, have a look. I'll put some links in the show notes and descriptions for that as well. If you're a parent listening to this in Leeds, we've got our football training sessions where we focus purely on this sort of stuff. Camps and things. Got our February camp coming up at the time of recording. So if you are a parent in Leeds and want to speak to us about coming down for a session and trying something out, then get on our website. Again, I'll put that in the notes. Nick, as always, thank you for your time, and I will see you this evening for our Monday night session.
Thank you.